punk rock bands.
Punk rock?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've lost you. The audio. Talk to me, talk to me,
we can
Darryl.
hear you. We can hear you. I can still hear him.
I'm trying to boot up this speaker over here, so just bear with me.
So you can hear.
Oh, we gotcha. We gotcha.
Oh, there we go. Okay, right on. So, for people who don't know who your band is, so that way we can get there. Can you tell us about your band?
Do you want a marquee?
Yeah, well, we formed in January 2012.
On the full moon.
On the first full moon. I'd known Jerome for many years, and we both played in bands, and we'd sort of share different bills, and we'd always be bumping into each other and sort of going off, and it never occurred to us to play music together. So I've known Jerome about 15 years now, and we spent New Year's together, 2011, 2012, and we were just playing each other, just stuff we'd been writing, and just on the fly we just decided to book a rehearsal with a rhythm section we knew, just to see if it would, I don't know why, it never occurred to me before that it might be a really good idea, but it just clicked really quick, and you know, it was about the 6th or the 12th, whenever that full moon was, we got together around that in Old Street and played, and it just fucking clicked. We got the Deadcuts sound.
So you, obviously both of your backgrounds are extensive. Can you go back into that for a second?
Mark, do you want to go for that?
Expensive. Well, I started a band called The Senseless Things in London when I was about 13 years old, and we did quite numerous EPs and independent releases. We signed to a major, and things went pear-shaped. They kept us for about 4 years. We did a lot of touring. I think when I was 23, we split the band up, kind of demoralised from 4 or 5 years of being only records. After that, I started a book called Scared of Girls, and put a band together called Jolt. We did a couple of EPs and a mini album and lots of touring. After that, I had a very, very brief stint in a band called the Wild Hearts, and then I formed a band called the Lambs, which was a kind of rotating lineup of musicians in East London where I'm based. I spent maybe a decade doing one-off Lambs things.
Well, that's when you were running the Rhythm Factory.
Yeah, I was more sort of involved in the running of a club in Whitechapel called the Rhythm Factory at that time. So I didn't really leave Whitechapel for about 10 years.
The Rhythm Factory is a great place because you could go there and you'd like have models in one corner, you know, artists in another corner, and like you know, just strung out poets, all just like in one area, sort of mingling around.
In another. It was a real mix of. It was early days for a London band called the Libertines, and the sort of scene that centred around that. It was very creative and very exciting. It was like a candle that burned, very bright and very brief.
What year would that have been?
2002, 2003.
So the it seems that you're getting a lot of focus now, and a lot of the attention has been on the you know, your connection to the kind of, like, if you want to say, post-punk movement.
Right.
What do you think? Like, when we talked in your text interview, you really, it's not that you shied away from distinction, but, you know, a lot of bands don't want to be categorized so clearly. Yeah. So, like, you know, how do you feel about that? That's the kind of sanction that you were given. It's like, okay, well, like, do you feel that articulates who you are, or?
We are really influenced by that whole post-punk thing, you know, like Pill.
It's a broad umbrella, isn't it? And I think post-punk, it kind of means, you know, it includes the more original and creative and artistic side of post-punk rock, you know, away from that sort of three chords and let's get pissed and spit at people. You know, the post-punk thing is quite a broad umbrella, and the four of us in Deadcuts, we you know, share a common love of bands like Bauhaus and Echo and the Bunnymen,
Psychedelic
Furs, the Teardrop Explodes, and I guess because that was the stuff we grew up with. It was big in England at the time when we were kids.
What year would that have been?
The 80s. The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, the first band I ever saw live. That had a profound effect on me, seeing them on a Juju tour. Amazing band.
See, these are bands as well that I find, like, you know, certain things come and go, but you can carry on listening to these bands for the rest of your life and never get bored. And like, I mean, it doesn't just stop with post-punk. Like, we're really into stuff like Massive Attack, or Death in June, or Wu-Tang Clan, or Tricky. There's a real broad mixture, and I'd even say, like, because obviously Mark was doing poetry for a short while, that you can almost sense, would you say, like a hip-hop vibe to your lyrics?
Well, I think there's a common theme of originality through all the bands we've just been talking about, and for me, the words, when writing a song, the words come first, and I'm really influenced by hip-hop, I think, because that's such a lyrical led musical format. You don't get that so much in rock, you know what I mean? It's easy just to, you know, sort of I don't know, if I think of like early Nirvana or something, like, you can get away with a lot in rock music, whereas you know, rap's all about the lyrical content.
Ability, yeah.
Well, you were talking about the idea of I wanted to go back for a second. You were talking about the kind of almost the kind of stickiness of artists that, like, you know, can stand the test of time, kind of like a Laurie Anderson, for instance. So,
Right.
you know, what do you believe that component is?
Well, that special ingredient, I think it's like a true artistic spirit in it. It's not copying what's been there before and just being true to yourself and coming out with something which is you. And we're all unique, and it's just not being a carbon copy. And I think, you know, especially someone like Laurie Anderson, yeah, who's really, you know, come out there. You know, I've got to click this little thing to make it go away. Updates, not now. Yeah, that's the MacBook, always with the updates. Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's an artist's responsibility to be true to themselves and their work. You know, I take that shit seriously. You know what I mean? I see myself as an artist, and I see what Deadcuts do as art. The other night when we played in London, someone described it was like watching Van Gogh paint with 4 brushes. The most extreme and flattering analogy. But it's art, what we do. It's sonic art.
Right. Well, and it's interesting that you said the idea of staying true to what you do. I mean, we've heard a lot of people in the pop world say, like, you know, in other words, if one has ingested whatever that kind of, you know, okay, this is what things are, if they've kind of taken that kind of stance at that stage of the game, then did they really sell out if that's already where they were?
There are people in the pop world that stay true to themselves too. There are great pop artists out there. I mean, I don't think it's across the board, but
I mean, more what I was getting at was like the pop, you know, like the whole thing of like rock and roll, it can't be original, and it just really, you know, if I find that we've written something and it sounds like something else, then that gets booted, that gets put in the bin immediately.
Right on.
You know what I mean? But, you know, and there's a lot of people out there, you know, and like when we play sometimes with younger bands, and they're talking about, oh, who inspired you, and, you know, what influences you, and it's hard to, you know, because it's fucking everything. We write about everything that we go through in our lives, and it's alien. So it's always been alien to me to try and be a carbon copy of someone else. Yet that is such a, it's so common in music industry, particularly keyboards and packaging. And, you know, the money's this way, so sound like that, and it just doesn't enter my.
And that's when the scene
thinking
gets destroyed as well. Like with the punk rock thing, you know, you had like 3 or 4 really original bands, and then everyone just copied them. And before you know it, it's like an organization, and it becomes like Punk Rock Limited, and just a fucking massive shit.
Yeah, well, I felt like, you know, we had an open kind of template from, you know, the mid-'70s right up until about 81. And then that's when I started to see a lot of the, like, formatting of bands, and then you saw the less diversification, and then all of a sudden there was those really huge distinctions, especially in punk rock, that were made for, like, you know, who is hardcore, punk rock, new wave, like bands that used to play on the same bill were then separated into their individual food groups. And that was
gets involved, isn't it?
Well, I think that's when a pop mentality of, like, you know, I want what I want versus the idea of being open to the diversity that's out there, and especially in the eclectic world, where I feel like the kind of eclectic rock star thing, you know, there's too many things dragged in my own opinion. I feel like there's too many things dragged in from the mainstream world into, like, you know, people wearing cool clothes. And I think that there's more of a responsibility from our side to actually show that there's a difference between the motivations why, you know, the mainstream does things and what we're motivated to do.
Well, the best part is
and I just wanted to use that as a bridge, though, to get to, we had talked about, in the pre-interview, we had talked about Alec Empire and how I had interviewed Alec, and, you know, your opinions of Alec and meeting him. Could you tell the people about that story?
Well, no, just years ago, I was in a, like, kind of a band that mixed, like, drum and bass loops with kind of punk rock guitars, if that's what you want to call it. And, you know, it was annoying because everyone labeled us as an industrial band, but we were far more into, like, dark drum and bass, like Ed Rush and Optical and stuff like that. And at the time, I just bumped into Alec Empire. He was doing a solo show. I mean, I'd seen Atari Teenage Riot loads of times. I'd met them backstage at, I think it was the Hilton Hotel, no, the Metropolitan Hotel, where Nine Inch Nails were having an after party. And what I liked about them, or Alec Empire as well, they just sat in the corner. They didn't talk to any of these, like, models or anyone backstage. You sat there and scowled like at everyone. And I thought, yeah, okay, those are the guys that I can fucking, you know, get along with. They've got the right attitude, you know.
It's great when a band like that, I mean, you know, when someone who's got their head screwed on gets success, and what they can use that success to, you know, subvert what's out there.
But when I met him, he was really fucking lovely, and he came over and he'd heard of us, and he was like, oh, you know, yeah, I'd love to sign you to our label or whatever, but we just lost contact, and I never really saw him again. But I also knew Nung, who was, I can't remember, Lolita Storm, Nung of Lolita Storm, and she was signed to Digital Hardcore. So yeah, I knew that people on that scene, and it was great, Digital Hardcore, because at that time you had all these terrible new metal bands, and they were like the antithesis to that. They were like the reaction. They were like, tear up the fucking manual and start again. And this kind of goes back to what we were saying about the manufactured idea, is you kind of need that to happen. You kind of need everyone to be copycats and be as useless as possible, so you can then tear up the book and start over from scratch, you know? It's just like a reaction. And but I felt, yeah, Alec Empire, he was like a Germanic Iggy Pop, you know. You couldn't take your eyes off him. He, you know, leapt all over the place and cut himself up, and you never felt that at any point that it was fake. you know.
Right. Well, and you know, that's the difference between the kind of, you know, like the pants that we wore back in the 70s and 80s that were ripped because you know, out of wear, not they weren't purchased with like perfect rips in them that are hemmed, you know. I think that
that's fascinating. That you see
and
that.
as a matter of fact, not to denigrate that, it's just the point that there's something about being being in something that's real, kind of like how we saw with the hippie movement, where you know, all of a sudden tie-dyes turned into tie prints, and the uniqueness of the clothing all of a sudden was subverted to the idea of being able to market to this kind of broad idea of the word hippie.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and so over the years, obviously, you've seen a lot of your scene change where you're at. Could you talk about that? Like, firstly, let's go back to the idea of both of your artistic educations. You know, Alexander or Mark, either one of you could take that.
Well, I know I was, like I said, I started out with that band Automator, which was like a kind of drum and bass stroke mixture of punk. But even back then, you know, I was listening to all kinds of music, you know, from Scott Walker, Jack Brel, Bowie. It never occurred to me that I should, you know, not listen to anything that didn't completely blow me away. You know, it was always open, and it was the same with you, wasn't it? Basically.
I think that when, you know, it was the time of the 7-inch single being like 70 or 80p, and you know, I could take money from my paper and whatever it would be, I don't know, £4 a week, and go. And records were sold everywhere back then. You could go to like Boots the Chemist and
Woolworths.
and you know, to see who had like the new 7-inches. There were a couple of shops in Fulham where I guess, sort of in hindsight, record companies would sell off their new releases or PR guys, and for about 70p you could pick up all these new 7-inch singles and stuff that was coming through. Like I mentioned, Susie and the Banshees and The Cure. They were kind of mainstream bands, I guess. I was about 10 years old. You know, like Scritti Politti were on top of the pops there, and there was a lot of alternative stuff, I guess, which was like reaching me as like a 10, 11-year-old kid, you know, with 3 TV stations and a radio. And of course, we had John Peel back then. So I mean, the range, you know, it was we were spoiled really. We could, you know, everywhere. If I think back, you know, down to the high street where I lived, there was like an R-Price Records, there was Smiths and a Boots and like all these sort of chain stores that would, you know, sell vinyl.
It was weird as well. Like you could find. I remember. Do you know that really hardcore film? I don't know. They say that it might be fake. The Faces of Death.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The whole series.
You could get that in Woolworths of all places, which was like a store where you could get like confectionery. And I remember seeing that and there, like this video. So it was real mix up. You could get like, you could go to the bucket in Woolworths and find Raw Power by Iggy Pop. You know, it was right across the board for a long time until the late 90s, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was great. It was like, you know, the high street was littered with music. In the same way now, you know, we're spoilt with online and being able to just access and just about anything you want to get your hands on. The high street was kind of like that.
Well, how have you seen that change from then to now?
Well,
the high street, the high street's gone, and it's all digital. But the what do you mean in regards to sort of being introduced to new music, or?
Well, I just mean the idea that, like, you know, when you lose a hub of an area, and we've seen it over the last, you know, 30+ years of okay, here's this thing that was this cultural hub. Like everybody has all the stories of, like, for me, it was Peddler's Village in, you know, of all places, this area, Wall, New Jersey. And that's, like, you know, not known for being, like, very open or, you know, progressive, but yet they had this one record store in it that was, like, the most massive record store ever, you know. A mall and this place called Music Den, where once again it's in a sterile mall that was full of crap, and yet almost right next to, like, you know, the big notable store where people go in to buy their crap, you had the Music Den, that, like, you know, where you could go in and walk in, you know, in the early 80s and hear Bauhaus and, like, you know, or whatever you're hearing in the late 70s, early 80s, you're hearing things of that time that are like, wow. It's like, wow, you're walking here, Gang of Four, and you're like, I can't even believe I'm hearing that. And then you walk outside the store and then you hear the rest of the music throughout the store.
When I was like 14, there were two places you could go. There was Sister Ray, or there was Resurrection Records. Because when I was like 14, you could buy stuff like you did the interview of Christian Death tonight. Now, the only way I could ever see an interview of them or Roz Williams or any of those underground bands was to either order Propaganda magazine from the States, or go to Sister Ray, or go to Resurrection Records. And I liked that. I liked the hunt. Now it's so easy. You just go to your computer. So in a way, I don't know, I kind of like the struggle of having to get or even order stuff through catalogs, like mail order. There was just something a bit more exciting about doing that. You'd wait there and it would arrive in a package. You know, I remember ordering like Current 93 and, you know,
I guess the equivalent now
like
is, say, that new Shellac album's just come out and everyone's sort of been waiting for the last 6 months.
But you have more access to it now, you don't have to go like and order it. It's right there. It's on your computer screen.
Yeah.
And
Right. Well,
now
I just want to interject for a second, because I guess I wanted to be more clear about the idea of, it's less about the access that I'm talking about. What I'm discussing is the idea that when there was these cultural hubs, then you would have a place to go and you would meet people and we would talk to people, and it was like, you know, you were comrades because you were going to the same store, and then all of a sudden they see you picking up that record. It's like, oh, that's out, or whatever, you know, especially at a time when there wasn't the easy access.
Growing up now, I guess,
right.
You know,
what do you feel the loss? What do you feel the loss of not having these places to go and how you interact with people? What is that like? Do you feel that that's a loss?
I quite like staying in, so I'm probably not the best person to ask.
Cool.
You'd have to ask a 13-year-old kid, because I guess it's so totally.
It's completely
different now, but yeah,
it's completely different. I mean, I
mean, fuck, you know, it's like that whole human contact is just gone, and it's people isolated in their rooms, and I guess for better or worse, things will come from that. But
even without judgment, I just want it's
the virtual connection, in it. It's for being, you know, rather than going out to play in the street, it's sitting there on a computer, and, you know, rather than just walking out and seeing what the fuck, you know, who's out and who's doing what, and
right. But also that leads to the idea that there was less clubs around, at least in the United States, because then when you didn't have the people going out as much, a lot of the clubs, especially in the eclectic world, because like the mainstream world, the kind of art, the kind of alternative mainstream world, there's always going to be venues for that kind of music. But but the more eclectic the music, those are the genres that lose when there's not these kind of groupings of people who aren't just talking to each other, but actually interacting and putting their money down and going to a venue.
Yeah.
You know, so speaking.
I mean, I think it's very polarized here in East London. I can think in the last like decade there are bands which have meant so much to me. I'm thinking about Beast Ella Beast and Selfish Cunt, who were, if you lived here, you know, in this sort of couple of square miles in East London, they were huge. You know, they were some of the most exciting gigs I've ever been to in my life. But if you weren't from this area, it could, you know, totally could pass you by. And I remember, because I got clean a few years ago, and one of the first things I did when I got clean was sort of like just look up stuff online, you know, music I liked and places, gigs I remembered really enjoying. And I remember really thinking, you know, how underrepresented some of this stuff was, which was like huge to me locally here. But it didn't seem to have a lasting legacy. You know, I didn't have the 1 million hits on YouTube or what have you. And it's weird, isn't it?
I think the business has, you know, definitely decided not to take as many risks. So at one time you could have a real eclectic mix of music and see it on Top of the Pops. And, you know, even Top of the Pops doesn't exist anymore. You know, like I said, everything is now accessed virtually. So, you know, every experience can be pretty much accessed virtually. Let's face it. And that's kind of sad, really, because then, you know, it cuts out a lot of the experiences you would have had you, you know, ventured out to see something new.
I mean, every now and again I come across a cable channel that has a particular style of music I'm listening to. Like I'm thinking about like the underground, like drum and bass and grime scene that was really promising here in East London a few years ago. There was a channel, we had a TV channel dedicated to that, but within about a year it became very homogenized, and I don't really know how much thought that was to do with the artists involved or the...
I just guess it's the same thing. You
no,
know?
yeah, there are very few outlets.
It's the same thing. Something gets to a point where everyone's copying and then it's just destroyed.
There was a big movement when I was growing up, when I was playing with my first band, the Senseless Things, to have more live music. There was a movement for more live music on television in Britain. So when you do stuff like Top of the Pops, you'd be encouraged to sing live, which was great for a live band, you know, to kind of do away with the miming and stuff. And that came and went, you know what I mean? And now there are, you know, I'm thinking Top of the Pops, that's gone, or The Word, every television show.
You're on The Word as well,
yeah, it was
right?
it was really anarchic, you know, late night, Friday night TV show.
I mean, the first time I saw him was on Top of the Pops.
Really?
And, yeah, my mum made a joke. We were sat there watching him. She goes, "Oh, that looks like the kind of guy you should be in a band with." And yeah, little did I know, you know. I mean, when I met Mark, it you know, obviously he looked slightly different. So I didn't even know that it was the same Mark of the Senseless thing until much later on, which kind of, you know, that was interesting. But like, yeah, there was a lot more focus on alternative acts back then. You know, you had access to it, whereas in a sense, the virtual world is such a big amount of information that it's almost impossible to see everything. You know,
Sure.
was it like Rice said something like, "Oh, it's like basically a bunch of people getting graffiti, spraying over each other to the point where it's like a wall of just mass where you can't see it anymore because it's, you know, a massive information.
Sure.
So you don't even know where to start or."
Well, the main reason why I like kind of wanted to focus the beginning of the interview on these kind of things is just because I think the discussion of like punk rock gets put in a context of now too often and gets separated from what the roots were and really what it was like, you know, when there were a few channels, like, you know, in the United States when we saw on American Bandstand when Public Image Limited played, you know, and like, you know, on Saturday Night Live when the Plasmatics played. You know, like there's these kind of things on Fridays when the Jam played. You know, there's all these things that like you remember.
It's life changing, yeah. It's life changing. You see that sort of stuff
Exactly.
when you're a kid, and it will change your fucking life.
Yeah, right. On Soul Train when Public Enemy first performed.
Sly and the Family Stone on Soul Train. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
That's
saw it live.
Yeah.
But see, that's what I'm saying. See, and that's the kind of thing of the idea of the when you remember, like, okay, seeing it versus the idea of, okay, I like there's a kind of communality, to be a little slippery on the word, to have experienced a certain thing, like just the other day, yesterday, as days blur together, the other half of Sector 6 Communications and I had gone to a kind of like a tech noise show over in Brooklyn, and in this venue, they don't allow people to take photos. And when you walk through, the reveals from room to room are amazing. And then when you get into the main room, they have this meltdown sound system that was designed by somebody who, there's only 10 of these sound systems in the entire planet. And there's one on the entire East Coast of the United States.
right.
And they don't allow pictures that, like, so, like, there was something that really kind of made me think about, like, you know, the late 70s, early 80s, when you went to a club and you didn't know what the venue looked like because you couldn't Google pictures of it, or you couldn't look at you know, endless photos of people taking, like, you know, independent pictures or whatever, and you had to, and you just went, and like, you know, and there's this kind of interesting, like, I was asking somebody about, like, when I was at the club, because it was apparent that they were into the music, which was good, but simultaneously their behavior was such that it was clear that they weren't of the culture.
Right.
And so when I asked them, I said, how did you find out about this? Oh, a friend told me, said there's a great club and they always have interesting music. Now, I'm really glad about somebody finding the club, finding this guy, because certainly this style of music doesn't typically fulfill the needs of the filler crowd.
Right.
But because, you know, you can't make a scene without hardcore members. I mean,
Right.
but simultaneously, a scene of hardcore members turns into a few hundred people that go to X, Y, and Z clubs in a specific region that really don't enable a lot of the artists that are in that form of music actually either get to venues that can really facilitate your shows, because there's nothing worse than you can be as well rehearsed as you like. You play a club that has a horrible sound system, horrible sound person. All you've done is bring a bunch of people to, like, bring your fan base to come to see you play a shitty show.
Right.
You know, so using that as a transition to get to, because I had some people that are part of the S6K network who were like, "Who's this band, Deadcuts?" But then when they looked at the image for the event, they realized that even though they didn't know who Deadcuts is, apparently by the size of the audiences you're playing to, somebody does. So
Right.
could you then articulate to that person, you know, what would you say to that person? Let me word it like that.
Go on, Mark.
Shit.
There's a challenge for you.
What would I say? Fuck.
I mean, I don't even really think about that. Like we play.
Darryl, you're asking us to put ourselves in that box which sells.
No. Actually, what I'm asking is the idea that, like, you know, even you have followed your dream, and there are tons of really excellent reviews of your work, and, like, you know, you're playing to sizable audiences, as the picture shows. Like, you know, that was your show, right? You were on stage. There are a lot of people there. You've played a lot of big shows.
Yeah, we're not. We're not photoshopping ourselves onto stages.
I mean, look, we've all had a lineage with, like, you know.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you?
Yeah.
Are you asking, like, how? What would I say to how do you get into that position?
No. I'm just asking the idea of, like, how does it feel? Like, the idea that you followed your bliss, and that there, simply put, how does it feel that you follow your bliss, and that there's other people, seemingly a lot of other people, that are interested in what your vision is?
Well, first off, like, I mean, I can't do anything else, so I'm really grateful.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful because, I mean, I've tried working a 9-to-5 job and it almost killed me, you know, especially type of jobs that, like, I had to do, like working in a fucking factory, or, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a blessing as an audience for what we do, but what we do, you know, we're passionate about what we do, and it's good. You know what I mean? I've made records before which haven't been as good, and maybe have, you know, received critical acclaim, and have sold quite well. But no,
well,
you know,
wait a minute. Let's back up for a second on that. Why don't you drill into that a little bit? Like, what kind of success have you had? Remember, there's a lot of people who will see this that, you know, don't know of your background or history or whatever, and then we can deal with some other things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to rubbish stuff I've done before. However, Dark is the Night, the Deadcuts album, is the first time in my life that I've created an album where I am entirely happy with how it's come out. You know, there ain't a line on it that makes me cringe. There ain't a note that makes my that makes me twitch. The whole thing is, without being a perfectionist, I'm kind of aware that, that's a big problem for me artistically. But I really love this band, and I love this record. And for other people, I think that's the most important thing, is that I'm happy with what I'm doing, because I've been in that situation, say with the Senseless Things, where we played some very large, some main stage at Glastonbury and Roskilde in Denmark, and the support band some nights were better. We had Red Cross open for us, and they were amazing. And just that one particular night in Kilburn, I remember, and when the adulation was, I felt undeserved, it never felt good. Yeah, I'm not the sort of person who could just take it like, yeah, everyone loved my shit, it's great. But I really love this stuff, so when people love getting to Deadcuts, it's a bonus. But the most important thing is, for me as a human being to be happy with the creatively, it's so massive. Like Jerome says, I come to, I've done other things, I've laboured, I've done office job and different things, and I'll never, at the best of times, I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. So to be able to express myself musically, creatively, and be happy with the result, it's massive. It's like a massive, massive gift, a massive blessing.
Oh, right on. Yeah,
with Eclipse, what we've done before, everyone in this band feels that. You've had our bass player Mark, who's played with the Wonder Stuff, or Trev, our drummer, who played with Minty. I had played in a group called the Scuzzies that got a small amount of notoriety.
Who played in Miranda Sex Garden?
Yeah, our drummer Trevor.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he played And his other band, The Servant, I used to go and see them a lot. I always loved the way he played drums, and it took me about a year to persuade him to join Deadcuts, and a couple of months in, we actually discovered we had played together. Neither of us said, "You'll love this, Darryl." We were talking about doing gigs in drag, and I was like, "I remember this one time, Paul Ronnie's birthday. We were in drag doing Dead Kennedy songs." And Trevor turned around, and he said, "Yeah, I remember doing some Dead Kennedy songs and in drag at the Intrepid Fox." And we're looking at each other, and he's like, "What were you?" And I was like, "I was the guitarist, bruv." You know, there's only three of us playing instruments, and Jerome and McCarthy are like listening to this, like, "My God, you two really have some impaired memory going on."
I saw Trevor.
He's a great drummer, though.
On the Depeche Mode tour, Songs of Faith and Devotion tour, because they were opening, and these were like stadiums. And I saw this guy behind the kit. He had like long red hair, and he was like drumming like with all his might, like Animal or something. You know, he was amazing, and I never forgot that experience. You know, and I mean, he's just phenomenal. He's a phenomenal drummer. It's great to have, you know, to grow up as a teenager seeing these bands and have the opportunity to play with them and create something visceral. And
sure. The main reason why I wanted you guys to kind of go into that thread of conversation is because most of the time when people like the discussion about bands is usually the idea of what mayhem happened on tour or gossip or whatever. And to me, the average person will never ever perform. And as a lifelong performer, I love discussing that, like, you know, the minutia of like why we're all moved to do what we do, you know, and why it, you know, that moment of, just like you said, like when my industrial band Abstinence, when Paul Raven from Killing Joke, when he was just in the studio with us, and it was just like, "Dude, you want me to do some bass lines on it?" It's like the idea that this person that, as in my childhood, was like a legend, then turns into the idea of like, "Oh, here, I'll just jam on, you know, I'll just lay down some bass tracks on your CD. Thank you."
That's pretty incredible.
You know, and I think that there's something there. So, like, could you talk about the kind of, or go a little deeper?
Well, I just wanted to say, on the subject of Killing Joke, my dad actually played with Killing Joke, which for years I didn't even know about. I didn't get to meet my dad till much later on, but I found out I'd been listening to him drumming on a Killing Joke album. He's in the video for that America song, where Jazz Coleman's sort of playing like a politician. So that was kind of mind-blowing. Like, yeah, Killing Joke were a massive inspiration. I
think Deadcuts, we've all seen each other play in different bands, and we kind of, admire, I guess, the sort of musical abilities we got.
But
Trevor was a drummer, you know, talking about Trevor Sharp, he was a drummer I always wanted to be in a band with, you know, and it's important as a songwriter that the guy behind you is sort of, you know, pounding out the rhythm in a way that is complementary to the song.
Oh yeah, your band is only as good as your drummer.
That's it, isn't it? That, yeah.
You can have the rest of the band, like you can have an ass-kicking bass player, ripping guitar player, or you know, you can have every component can be wonderful and powerful and present. And if your drummer is not, forget it.
What's that saying? Like a great drummer isn't going to make a great band, but a bad drummer will break a great band. You know,
correct.
Will fuck it up.
Well, because it stirs the blood. It's like primal energy. You know.
Right.
It's what
I mean. Think about the idea that there are so many bands that, like, especially in the early new wave punk rock days, it's not like the guitar players and bass players were all that proficient, because you had on some sides you had people who were like who enjoyed kind of being a sloppy or really avant-garde guitar, like the guitar player from Gang of Four, for instance.
Right.
And so, like, where people would hear him play and be like, like my prog rock friends of the time would find that kind of stuff, like, like the sound of the guitar on Anthrax, for instance, was unlistenable to most of them, And so the idea of the different styles of performance and such and what comes out of that. So, like, when you were developing your personal styles of performing, could you break out the idea of like when you first picked up your instrument, what was your motivation and where were you at that point in your life? Like what year, what age, so on?
Punk rock. That's why I used it right from the start of this interview. 10, 11 years old, those bands from the sort of bands we've been discussing, were coming from like a DIY ethos, and I'm happy to go under that broad tag for Deadcuts, because that's what punk rock means to me. The DIY, like anyone can do this if you apply yourself.
See, and in a way, I think the trouble is that's been taken to the absolute extreme where literally anyone thinks they can do this, and that's kind of like the problem I have. Is like you get a lot of average people out there saying a lot of average things, that basically, I won't name names, but there's a lot of them out there, and yeah. So I would say that would be the downside.
Yeah, that's some people's thing, though, being average.
Well, in other words, I don't want to sound. I certainly don't want to sound like like people are who they are, and they have to deal with that on their terms. But yeah. I think simultaneously, when you're striving to do something that you believe is earnest, and I guess I'll let me put this in the form of a question. When someone is striving to do something in earnest, and they see somebody who is much more earnest about following whatever model is appropriate for the time, what's your thought process there?
It just doesn't compute for me.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, the copying, the idea of seeing something and wanting to, but I guess that is a thought process for a lot of people. Like impersonation. I know for me, art is got to be original. All the music I like, I think that's a common theme. It has something brings something personal and original to it. I know that's just what floats my boat.
It's like
what hits me here and here.
When I was 15, like the Britpop scene and the grunge scene were at their height, but I wasn't really interested in it. Like, ironically, years later, I can go back and go, yeah, Sonic Youth, they're fucking great. But at the time, I've never been like one of those people to follow a movement at a certain time. I just did what I felt was right. And at that point, I was listening to loads of underground bands. It's ironic you have interviewed Christian Dept, because that was like another one, like the early Christian Dept with Ross Williams really blew my mind, man, because they were like David Bowie, if David Bowie had lived like underground.
It's mad, isn't it? I mean, you've got to be open-minded with shit. I mean, Jerome told me, I did see Christian Dept when I was very, very young. I can't really remember, but Jerome turned me on to it not so long ago, and it blew me away, some of the stuff, and I guess it's so important to be open-minded to just what's out there. You know what I mean? Like I've worked with people who are very closed-minded musically, and also I've worked with people who've wanted to, at a given point, they'd be like, let's sound like this, or this is the current thing, let's sound like that, let's try and do that. And that to me is always a very alien concept. Like, I just think, why? Why would you want to do that?
Mm-hmm. Since we're about, we're almost an hour into the interview. Let me not lose the chance to discuss the movie.
The movie. Oh, which one?
Yeah.
Do you mean the Richard Wollstonecraft one?
Correct.
Okay, The Second Coming.
That's your one.
That's my one. Yeah, that was wow, how did that come about? Well, it started just that I got to know Richard through people like Boyd Rice, who come and stayed with me, and I performed with him on stage, and I was a massive fan of his as a kid, so that was like another thing. But he had been in a film Richard had done before called Pearls Before Swine, and just out of the blue, Richard said, "Oh, look, I need a place to stay in London. Can I come and stay with you?" And I was like, "Sure." And he literally got through the door, and he was like, "Oh, this whole area is great. Let's shoot some scenes." So, you know, instantly, in the middle of the night, it seemed really obvious to, well, us at least, to go out and film, you know, like a black magic ritual by, you know, an Aleister Crowley hymn to Pan, to do that out in the woods whilst it was snowing. I mean, it just came about. There was no script. There was no real idea behind it. And then, like, I knew that Peter, as in Pete Doherty, wanted to get involved in the movie and wanted to, like, extend and do more acting. So I called him up. I think he was in Geneva at the time. And he got back and he was like, "Yeah, you know, he loves that Yeats's The Second Coming poem," which is basically, you know, what it's based on. So, you know, the next day we met up with him, we shot some scenes, and it was, I don't know how to use the word, but it was, you know, it would just, he just would stick the camera on us and just film, literally just film right from there, and we would just have to improvise. You know, there was no real idea there. They would just go with what you feel is natural, you know, and go with your instincts.
It's coming out quite soon, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's being shown at like some film festivals, and it's funny. I watched the clips of it, and when it was filmed, I was kind of living not exactly the cleanest of lives. And when I look back on it, it's like looking at a different person, you know. There are a few like drug scenes in it, and yeah, it was like looking at a different person. I mean, you know, the way I was in that movie is completely. I look at that person and I think, who the hell was that? You know.
Wait a minute.
I'm curious now. I'm looking forward to this.
But at the same time, there were things that were precious to me, that, like, you know, doing that ritual, and strange little occurrences through it, like the movies, like 7 different stories in 7 different countries, and when there were stills of the taken of the ritual, there were like 7 rays coming down from the sky and like the picture, and you know, just weird coincidences, strange sort of haunting like coincidences that then kind of started to happen during the making of our record as well.
Yeah, he's an interesting director.
Well, I just wanted to kind of stop for a second, just because the artist John Leguizamo, I recently had seen him, and he was talking about, you know, his experience of as his career was blowing up, but then he also had a drug habit, that, like, you know, just drug issue, like drinking too much and, you know, the drugs, whatever. So could you talk about that a little bit? Because you were talking, you know, you had...
I mean, it's very simple. It stifle your creativity. So if you want to be a creative person, you know, I think when you start out with anything, it could be drugs, alcohol, whatever, it can be quite a good tool to use for creativity. But eventually, it's just like anything. It's gonna ruin your life.
I mean, for me, it was always a big, big lie, and I kind of knew it when I was a kid, and I have, you know, been plagued with addiction problems my whole life. I'm sure, though, as like a teenager, I was aware that the whole thing about drink or drugs enhancing creativity, you know, even when I was 13, 14, I knew that was a myth. I truly believed that I couldn't exist without some kind of medication for many, many years. And I didn't even attempt to address my drug problem until I turned 30. And at that point, you know, it was one of those crazy drug things I'd lived my 20s and my teens through. Like, yeah, when I'm 30, I'll clean up because I don't want to be an old junkie. You know,
I mean,
and I did get clean for the first time when I was 30.
Yeah.
But for me, definitely, I can't do shit when I'm using. You know what I mean? I can't, you know, I can't tie my shoes. I can't leave my flat. I can't, or, you know what I mean? I can cross the road to score some drugs and get back indoors. That is the limit of my capabilities as a using addict. And I'm certainly, you know, I can't even listen to music, let alone write it. But clean, the shit just flows. You know what I mean? I write every day, and you know, the songs are out there.
I mean, towards the end of the Scuzzies, I'd get back from doing a show or a tour or whatever, and I felt like on stage this massive adrenaline rush, right? And then like I'd go back home, and I would feel like I couldn't get rid of that adrenaline, and I couldn't get rid of any of these like extreme experiences, and it got to the point where they were like filling my head up to such a degree I thought I was going to go insane. So that's when I used to self-medicate. And I truly, honestly believe back then another reason why I self-medicated, because I just wasn't happy with the music I was making. I can put on the Deadcuts album and listen to it for pleasure. I can't really do that with any of my other stuff, you know, and I knew it. And I knew that I was lying to myself. So it was a lot easier to numb up.
Like that, which is interesting. I mean, you know, I try and always, you know, remind Jerome and sort of build his confidence as a writer, as a talented writer. But I really felt that as well, especially when I was a teenager and I was getting success. I really felt like a bit of a fraud. You know, I thought, you know, my early stuff, and it's just because, you know, I was young, I had no confidence, and I was strung out on drugs, you know, and, you know, there was a bit in me that just knew that the shit I had a lot of opportunities when I was young to make some great records, and, you know, and I can't just blame it on signing to a major label. At the end of the day, you know, I was fucked up and I didn't have that confidence that, you know, hopefully I have now. You know, that clarity, you know, is so important, and, you know, to affirm your positive qualities in it as a human being. It's important.
How did your families respond to you as an artist, you as, you know, a growing addict, you know, you as their child?
Well, I left home so early. I mean, I was 13. When I turned 13, I lived above my father on a pub, and I moved in above when my mum and dad separated. I was living in a room, so I kind of sort of isolated from any parental input, you know. And I was thrown out of there when I turned 15 in school, and you know, I was like off doing my thing. There weren't much interaction other than, you know, you know, my father was an alcoholic as well, so like our interactions were of the you're high, bang, fuck off. There was no, you know, so like me as a musician, it didn't really come to it, you know what I mean?
I mean, the same. When I was 13, I was like living away from home and staying with friends and then touring. But I will say one thing, my mother was very supportive. I was an only child, and she really encouraged me to follow art and to follow, you know, the passion that I have, music. But, you know, coming from quite a poor family, you know, I paid for all my guitars and all my equipment myself, so, you know, I certainly didn't, you know, I wasn't pampered or anything like that, but I was still encouraged. And, I mean, I was kind of lucky because my mum used to work at this studio called Underhill Studios when I was like about, I was really young. I took about between 1 and 4, and people like David Bowie would come in, and Iggy Pop, like Iggy Pop read me a bedtime story, and stuff like this. And so of course, you know, music had always been around me. You know, my stepfather Andy Clark, he played the keyboards on Ashes to Ashes, and so, you know, I was lucky in the sense that I was exposed to all this at a very young age. But then, yeah, obviously, you know, you grow up, and I think every artist does kind of strive to go on a solitary path and to, you know, find themselves, if you will. And by doing that, you kind of have to leave home early and, you know, experience life on its own terms. Otherwise, you'll have nothing to write about.
Yeah. If I look back, if it hadn't been for the drug thing, I probably would have been encouraged. You know, music definitely. You know, like if I have a great relationship now. My mother, she's very supportive that you know, I'm still playing and writing.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you said that about, like, you both brought up the struggles of growing up in a working class or under-resourced or just barely resourced area. When I interviewed Douglas, he had categorized where he grew up as being a white working class ghetto.
That's right.
And so what would you, like, a lot of what is known of, interestingly, obviously, the origins of the punk movement in a lot of ways, especially on your side of the water, was from the idea of coming from from people who worked in the factories, who, like, you know, they just didn't get necessarily a square deal, and then everything they did, whether it was their art, their culture, everything kind of had that energy of that grit, you know. Could you talk about that?
I think it's a rebellion thing, isn't it? Because if you're working class, you're not meant to be an artist.
Yeah.
You get beats for being an artist, you know, and it fuels that motivation.
Yeah.
I guess maybe, you know, because it's such a, you have to carve, it's such a privileged fucking existence, and you have to carve that out yourself. So if it ain't handed to you on a plate, you come from the sort of background we come from, I guess it makes you much more humble and appreciative of.
Makes you work harder.
Makes you work hard. Yeah, definitely motivates you. The whole thing, the whole idea, isn't it, of working for what you do rather than being gifted it and like.
Or born into a family.
Yeah, like I should I should have this, I should have that. You know, expecting to be treated a certain way.
History's kind of proven that, really.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, it's not, you know, I was going to say, like, the anger, it's an expression as an outlet, but, you know, I'm thinking about the early punk stuff, but you're right to sort of point out that, like, punk was like a working class movement in some respects, and, you know, more recently, with the sort of successful rappers we've had coming out of England the last few years, like Dizzy Rascal, Tinchy Strider, both, you know, Stone's Throw, they went to school just around the corner from where we're sitting now. And we've got, I'm trying to think of some white rappers who are doing quite well. What's his name from Dagenham?
Dagenham Days.
It's gone down the hole. But there's you know, I remember in about 2011 thinking, fucking hell, there's like a lot of working class kids from round here actually making it in music, and what a beautiful thing that is. You know, like Chase and Status, the first Chase and Status album got a lot of guest appearances from rappers that are sort of based, you know, very geographically very close to where we are, and I thought that was really powerful. You know what I mean? That the Tiny Tempo doing so well, and they're breaking it stateside. Yeah, Disease. And I remember seeing Wu-Tang on their anniversary tour over here, name checking a load of London rappers and feeling really proud. You know what I mean? Because it's just following on the artistic tradition, in it, and that these kids are making music and succeeding against all the odds.
Did you ever hear the Wu-Tang side project called Gravediggers?
Nope.
Oh man, you have to hear. There's an album called 6 Feet Deep, and it's like, the only way I can describe it, it's not going to sound good, but trust me, it's like gothic hip hop, and it's just. But this is the kind of stuff I like, stuff that's above and beyond categorization. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't put it in a box. And then, The Cure can fit in there again, like the bands we were mentioning earlier. Susan the Banshees, The Furs, Massive Attack, Death in June, Boyd Rice. All these people, you can't categorize them. Tricky, Portishead, there's so many of them. Scott Walker. You can't really say they're one thing, And that's great, and I think it's the same thing with Deadcuts, really. All right, you can hear a lot of the influences, but I don't think you can pin this down to one genre.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, we're coming up on about our hell point, which is 13 minutes left. So
we have before you, Dave, we've written something today that we're going to play just to make this a special occasion and mark the day. We mistook the Eastern time for GMT, so we've been hanging out, as we do most days writing, and we just got this new song called Red Tide, and if you're up for it, we could perform it at some point. But keep talking now, because we just have to grab our bits and pieces that are lying around here.
Cool.
What do you like to do 13 minutes before the end?
Right on. So then, what I'd really like to kind of get to is the connection between your vision of what you've wanted to do, and the idea that you've been able to get this kind of support in the reviews you have. What's the next vision, and as you were talking about these other acts being durable, what do you think you're doing in your art that's adding that kind of durability? That nobody really can show.
Yeah, we got a lot of sirens going on outside.
I think that was a New York siren, sure.
You got sirens at your end? Yeah, we got sirens here.
Watch out! They might be coming.
I think with every song we try and find that special ingredient that kind of hits you. That will make the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end, and we're really, particularly with the stuff we're writing now, with mine to having the second album, we're just trying to go a bit deeper. You know what I mean? Always digging for that. It's undefined, that it's that special ingredient.
Yeah, if it doesn't make the hairs on your neck stand on end, then it's not worth doing. And hopefully when we perform, then the audience feel the same way. We got a lot of great reactions. We're about to go back to Paris. We played there a few days ago now.
Yeah,
Paris.
Tuesday night. We got a good thing going on there with Peter Doherty, taking us over sort of once a month, and good to get out of London. But we're starting to play more regionally as well in this country, which I think is really important. And when we started, I thought it was really important, energy level-wise, to just focus on the writing and the recording, and we've done that, and we're getting room to. Because it can be really exhausting touring, you know what I mean? If I look back on sort of bands I've done before, that's kind of ahead the record and the songs, and I really feel we've done it the right way around with Deadcuts.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
right on.
more good music. I mean, we're using SoundCloud and the available tools to just put new shit out all the fucking time. That's what we're doing it. And yeah, Speeder Wax. We've got a single coming out next week called Dust Chasers off the album with a track called Breaking Up Midnight, which didn't make the album. It's a wicked song though. And then we're going to do another EP with Beatrice Brown.
And a second.
So for the people who don't know who you are and haven't seen the reviews, what is the correlating thread between what all the other reviewers have, you know, how they've kind of either categorized or, I guess, their overall opinion of you?
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
In other words, yeah. What? Right on. Thank you. What have the reviewers, like? What's the correlating kind of assessments that reviewers have made about you?
They've been really supportive. Every review we've had's been great. We had Louder Than War.
We got heart, we got dignity, we got energy, we got love, we got art, we got harmony. We got a great rhythm section.
all the ingredients to make a great piece of art, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people saying we like reminiscent of stuff like maybe the Psychedelic Furs and Killing Joe's and The Cure. Without sounding derivative, you know what I mean? It has, or like the Chameleons, it has like something, what was it, so described it as, listening to Deadcuts, it's like being on a speeding train going through the countryside. It's like every song is very pictorial.
Oh, right on. Well, we are at the 5-minute mark.
Okay.
Okay, well this song's only about a minute and a half, so we're in tune.
Okay.
I need to remember how it went.
We could always like... Right. Are you ready?
Hang on.
We're just going to listen to the track so we can remember how it went.
Darryl, ask us another question.
Ask us another question whilst we're doing...
So,
good ad not to do...
so since you're more than a two-piece, where are the other band members?
Mark McCarthy lives on a boat in Essex. So our bass player, he's taken the weekend to be on the boat, and our drummer, Trevor, races Volkswagen vans, similar to the Buzzcocks' original drummer. They're like VW Maniac.
Oh, right on.
So yeah, I think Trevor's racing his van.
Well, very quickly, I know that you are working with the producer from the the one that had worked with the Buzzcocks.
Yeah, Harvey Birrell. Yeah.
And what's that experience like?
Perfect for us.
He's perfect for us.
Absolutely
yeah, we've been lucky. He's done our live sound a few times too, and yeah, he's a talented motherfucker. Because we recorded Dark Is the Night in our rehearsal room with very, very cheap equipment. You know, there's no sort of special mics or high-end outboard equipment. We took it into a studio to mix for like maybe 4 days, 5 days. But even that was quite a what would be classed as a budget studio.
Yeah.
Old school studio.
And what do you think he brought to, like, you know, because we all know heavy-handed producers where every time they go somewhere, they leave their fingerprints all over everything, like a crime scene.
Yeah.
And so, like,
yeah,
you know,
he kind of just brought out. He really brought out the songs and
excellent.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, hard working. You know, I won't say it weren't difficult at times.
But I guess that isn't it. That relationship?
I mean, we'll work with him again, definitely.
Oh, of course, but I mean, I think that whether you're a musician working with a producer, or you're a filmmaker working with a director, or I believe that there's kind of it's a contentious relationship to have somebody, or a dramaturg, who's like, looking at your piece going, it's 20 minutes too long, it does.
Yeah.
I feel like, so what did he as a producer, like, since you were so happy with him, could you kind of articulate that a little bit more?
He just knew how to generate the sounds and the tones that we were looking for, and what records we really, really loved.
Yeah, and also like he knew when we could do a tape, he'd keep us working.
Yeah, he'd push us.
There were a few. I did maybe 8 vocal takes in the afternoon, and then he brought me back in a week later and was like, "No, there's at least 3 of these you can make better," and I'm lazy. But I do them again, and they come out better. You know what I mean? I listen to him.
Yeah. All right. Should we give this a go then?
Yeah. Okay. This tune's entitled "Red Tide." It was written this afternoon.
Hence the DIY overall vibe of it.
I just want to check one thing.
Another thing about Harvey, I have a feeling he pretty much knew from day one what we were going for, and that really helped as well. It wasn't hard work with him. There were other things that were hard work, obviously, like getting everyone in on time and, various strange things that went on during the recording, which I kind of mentioned to you in the previous interview. But for the most part, it was just like playing live and doing the best takes we could, and we came up with a great album. Anyways, I'm rambling. Let's do this.
Yeah, Red Tide. 1, 2, 3, 4. Red tide, I'm gonna bait under the candle lights. The surface is smooth, there are no corners, only curves. We're disintegrated, some of our shadows against the grain. Cherish rain. The nitro in early, tempting fades. There are no corners, there's no weight. Thank you, Darryl.
Right on, man.
It's in its kind of infancy, but that's a rough idea for anyone who hasn't heard us, what we sound like, basically.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
We got that challenge of being able to write and broadcast a song a day.
That's going to happen one day.
Right on. Well, we have 3 minutes left. What would you like to leave your audience with?
Ooh. Go out and buy
Yeah, where's that record gone? You can order this from Speederwax. There aren't very many left. Yeah, come out to a Deadcuts show and stateside.
Try and get
bring us over. Yeah.
And if anybody was, if you were telling somebody, hey, watch this interview, why would you tell them to watch it?
Because there ain't no better band in London if you love live music or you love music. you need to check out Deadcuts. You need Dark is the Night in your life.
Couldn't send that better, man. Yeah.
Darryl, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Right on. Well, we're really looking forward to working with you in the future and talking to you more. So it was good to have you as the inaugural event, and next week we will have Christian Death in with us. So
Cool.
Darryl Hell, signing off.
Thank you, Darryl. See ya.
Right on now.
Yeah.